Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and I think it is fair to say that this brewery are very solid all round. They are quite prolific and try a lot of different things, and they are probably one of the best known names when it comes to the Japanese craft beer scene as well. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases. It's a style that I haven't tried from them before, and it's also a sub-style that you don't find all that often in Japan based on my previous experiences. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head to the city of Ise in Mie Prefecture, which is a bit to the northeast of me here in Osaka, and we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Ise Kadoya brewery. So this particular beer is called No Ga Tokeru Ultra Heaven Triple IPA, if I've got that correct, but this one comes in at 10% ABV. It's a triple IPA. I'm not sure exactly what kind of triple IPA it's going to be, but yeah, we'll find that out when we taste this. But yeah, definitely cool to return to Ise Kadoya once again. This is my first review from these guys in about 3 years actually. So yeah, this beer is another one that I picked up at liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Yamaichi here in Osaka. A lovely little beer shop run by Koji and his daughter Rika, based in Koji's father's or grandfather's old soy sauce factory from what I understand, but definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. I'll put the link to their Facebook page and Instagram in the video description for you below, but do go and check them out if you get the chance as well. A shout out in this video as well to my friend Jordan of Insider Outsider in Japan, a lovely channel that he has there. I'll put the link to his channel in there below. This is his local brewery, and he is a little bit of a craft beer fan. His channel isn't really about craft beer, it's just about him being a foreigner living in Japan, but yeah, I do know he likes Ise Kadoya, so a big shout out to him in this video as well. But like I said, very cool to return to these guys for the first time in quite a wee while. We've got an interesting beer to look at here, so let's crack on and see what this one is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Ise Kadoya brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. Just go into the homepage, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, prefecture, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you're looking for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with many other things, and there are playlists there from a number of other countries too. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Ise Kadoya once again. So, Ise Kadoya, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Ise City in Mie Prefecture in the Kansai region of Japan, a little bit to the northeast of where I am in Osaka just now. But the city is dubbed the holy city of the Shinto religion, and it's home to over 200 Shinto shrines, notably the Ise Grand Shrine, which is something I do want to go and see at some stage. But the city apparently gets 5 million visitors per year, but it is actually a relatively small town of only around 130,000 people, so that kind of gives you an idea of the religious significance that this place has. And the Shinto religion is pretty interesting. It's all about kind of respecting nature and natural beauty and taking wisdom from your ancestors and stuff like this. It is quite interesting to learn about actually. But to move on to the Ise Kadoya company. This is a really interesting company, a very old one actually. The brewery itself though was founded back in 1997, and it's owned by Narihiro Suzuki, who previously studied microbiology at Tohoku University. So he runs the company with his wife Chika Suzuki, who does a lot of work in the company's various restaurants. But the roots of the Suzuki's family business go back to 1575, when his family started the Kadoya Cafe with the aim of selling the Kinako Mochi tea to the Ise pilgrims. But Narihiro is the 21st generation of his family to run the company, so that is pretty impressive, I have to say. But the company's full name is now Nikken Jayamochi Kadoya Honten, and this is apparently one of the longest running companies in Japan, but when they date back to about 1575 or something, you can understand why. But in the early days, the company struggled when the Jibiru boom kind of fell flat, and Narihiro took a gamble and produced the Shinto beers as a sort of souvenir for people that were travelling to Ise to see the shrines and things, and it was actually this that kept the brewing side of the business going through the difficult times. And it was only in 2010 that the Ise Kadoya beers, the more adventurous American style beers, started to perform better than the Shinto beers. But the brewmaster at Ise Kadoya is Masakazu Nakanishi, who joined the company in 1997 after working an office job, and he'd studied fermentation in high school during his agriculture classes, and the brewery apparently were looking for a brewer when his work contract finished, so it was a perfect fit for him. But he later became the brewmaster in 1999, and another man who's quite instrumental in the Ise Kadoya company is Yoshihiro Matsuoka, who is one of the restaurant managers and the label designer as well, and he's known as the walking beer dictionary. Apparently he's got a very, very good knowledge of all the different kind of craft beers and different styles and things like this, and he has kind of pushed Ise Kadoya in quite a few interesting directions and pioneering directions when it comes to the Japanese beer scene. But the brewery import various hops and malts from across the world. They use water from the local Miyagawa River, which is filtered through charcoal microfilters to give it quite a unique profile apparently, and these guys are apparently very thorough in their quality control processes, and they've won many awards for their beer over the years as well. But they've got a number of different restaurants. Two of the notable ones are the Biagura, which is the on-site restaurant, the original site of the business, and they also have the Ise Kadoya Kaikumayaten as well. So hopefully we can go and film an out and about video at one of these places too. But they've got a core range of beers these days, various seasonal beers. They also produce a bit of cider, soy sauce tamari, miso paste, and the kinakomachi tea as well. But in 2018, they opened up their new brewery. This has given them the capacity to brew 650,000 litres of beer per year, and they've started canning their beers fairly recently as well. You can find a number of the Ise Kadoya beers in various chain supermarkets now, such as the Aeon supermarket and Liquor Mountain and things like that, which is quite a big liquor shop that you'll find here in Japan. But more recently, they've been trying to export their beers abroad, from what I understand. Ise Kadoya have always been quite diverse in the different styles of beer that they do, and if you look through the reviews I've done from them over the years, you will get some idea of that. But as of April 2023, when I'm filming this particular review for you, they've produced around 420 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. So yeah, it is definitely fair to describe Ise Kadoya as one of the kind of pioneers of the Japanese beer scene, and for a long time, you know, for me, the three breweries that I really liked in Japan would have been Ise Kadoya, Shiga Kogen, Tamamura Honten, and Mino beer. Of course, Fujizakura are a very interesting one as well, but they produce mainly German styles of beer. They're not so much of an American brewery, I have to say. But yeah, really interesting company, this one, and always cool to return to these guys for something new when the chance arises. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about the Ise Kadoya beer brand and the parent company behind it. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can once again check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually talk about this beer a little bit. So this one, if I remember correctly, it is 330 millilitres. This is another beer that I picked up at Liquor Shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Maichi in Osaka, as I mentioned earlier. I believe this one cost me like 1,050 Japanese yen, something like that. So that translates these days somewhere into the region of like $8.50 American, maybe about €8, 80 Swedish kroners in that case, and maybe about £7.50 sterling. So yeah, as I've always said to you, craft beer in Japan is a little bit pricey because the barley has to be imported, all the hops are imported as well. So yeah, craft beer is a wee bit more expensive than the likes of Nihonshu and things like that. But yeah, the artwork on this one, I have to say, is a little bit different compared to what we've seen from Ise Kadoya in the past. And they've got new bottle caps as well. They always used to have green bottle caps, but these days they seem to be using these kind of brass coloured ones, just with the black note on it there. So there you can see Ise Kadoya as well. But yeah, very nicely presented. yeah, the name of this beer as well, so I need to make sure I get this right when I'm actually uploading the video. So the name of this one, according to Untappd, is No Ga Tokeru Ultra Heaven 3X Triple IPA. So No Ga Tokeru translates into English as like a brain melter. So this is meant to be a kind of mindfuck beer, I guess we could say. That's probably a better translation of it. But yeah, Ultra Heaven IPA. So yeah, kind of interesting. But I do have to say I like the I don't know what kind of animal that's meant to be in the middle of the artwork there, but it is very nice. But like we said, this one is a triple IPA. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is hopped with Mosaic, Simcoe, and Amarillo. So all of these hops we know quite well. All three of them are American. Mosaic, about 14% alpha acid, lovely kind of big juicy tangerine notes. Simcoe is going to give you a kind of soft passion fruit, of course. Or if this one is going to be a West Coast IPA, it will be a little bit more oily. And Amarillo is one of my old favourites, a 12% alpha acid, big orangey, zesty thing. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the actual beer. We can get this guy out and we can go on with the tasting then. This should be very, very nice. Yes. As I say, it's strange to think that it's been 3 years since I last reviewed a beer from Ise Kadoya, but that's just how it goes sometimes. There's so many breweries out there these days that it is kind of hard to keep up with everything that's going on. But yeah, I think, just by the looks of this beer, I think we're in for a West Coast triple IPA. So yeah, this is the first triple IPA that I've had from Ise Kadoya at all, and it's one of the first West Coast triple IPAs I believe I've had from a Japanese brewery as well. But yeah, I do enjoy the West Coast IPAs, so I am certainly not going to complain about that. But anyway, as you can see, this beer, it looks absolutely lovely. So before the head disappears, we can say that it's poured with about a 3/4 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream or ivory coloured head there. You can see there's a mix of medium-sized bubbles at the bottom, but a more foamy layer toward the top. But the colour of this beer is very nice. It's a sort of medium amber, quite obviously filtered. You can see the thing is pretty much crystal clear. But yeah, this looks nice. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, 1 or 2 big bubbles at the bottom of the glass, and you can see the odd one going up toward the bottom of that head there. But it does look very nice, I have to say. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role as well, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts that you put into the beer as well, will also kind of feed into that as well. But you don't often have to care about those 2 variables when it comes to different kinds of IPAs, to be honest with you. But yeah, it certainly looks the part. For me, a lovely kind of medium amber colour. So for me, when it comes to West Coast IPAs, there are some really, really nice different variants of these, but for me there's 2 main kinds. You get the ones that are a bit more kind of bready and biscuity, such as the Russian River, Pliny the Elder, but you've also got the more sort of oily, you've got the more kind of oily caramelly ones as well, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. I think this one might end up being somewhere in the middle, just judging by the colour of it. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then, and see how we go on. I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this beer. Yeah, now I have to say straight away, this is not the most pungent of beers in terms of its aroma, but it does kind of give you everything you would expect. It strikes me as if it's going to be a more kind of modern take on the West Coast IPA, to be honest with you. It's not as deep and dank as some examples of this style that I've come across before, but yeah, it goes together quite nicely, I have to say. Yeah, for me, the aroma is quite, for me the aroma on this one is really quite nice. You've got a mix of sweetness in there, which you do want. You've got a little bit of green component, and you've got the big oily fruity notes. And this is one, when I saw the hop profile on this, I was like, I'm probably going to enjoy this. I love these. When it comes to West Coast IPAs, I really do enjoy the ones that are a little bit more orangey leaning, and this one will be that, and it is. So yeah, let's break the aroma of this down and just describe it for you a wee bit more kind of in depth, if you like. So for me, the aroma of this beer, the backbone is a little bit more kind of You've got a little bit of like a fresh kind of brown bready bread crust in there. There are one or two little crackery notes, but I do get like a kind of a mix of sweet white bread and sweet wholemeal brown bread coming out of this beer. So yeah, I really do like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, fresh brown bready bread crust, a little bit of cracker, a little touch of woodiness, and then you've also got that wee bit of yeah, brown bread, a little bit of cracker. The brown bready notes in this are quite interesting. I've got a feeling this has got a bit of American Turo malt in it. There's just something very familiar about this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of like German crystal in there too. There's just something very familiar about these bready notes. So yeah, a little bit of a drier bread crust, sweet kind of brown bread sitting on top of that, and then you get the kind of, there's a wee bit of, as I say, a little bit of crackery note to it, a little touch of woodiness further in you go, but then you start to get the sweeter side of the beer as well. So for me, there's a good little bit of an oily caramel coming out of this one. You do get quite a lot of biscuit as well, and at 10% EBV, yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense, I think, is really quite nice. It gets a big thumbs up from me in terms of the malt base. It's properly old school West Coast, this one, I have to say. But yeah, beyond that, I don't think there's too much we need to say about the malt base. I've got a feeling we'll get a bit more complexity out of this beer in the actual flavour than we will the aroma. Now the green component for me is quite interesting. So there are three different kinds of hoppings when it comes to IPAs. So you get early edition hopping, assuming that you have a 90-minute wort boil, of course. That takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, you know, more time and heat to extract the chemicals from the hops, so therefore you get the more bitterness. But then you've also got the late edition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. And then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil, and that gives you pretty much all flavour and aroma. Now, New England IPAs, the more modern ones, they tend to rely on the latter two. West Coast IPAs use all three, but there are more modern takes on the West Coast IPA which are less bitter than the original ones were. The original ones were at least 80 IBUs normally, but more modern West Coast IPAs can be about 50 or 60 IBUs. But yeah, for me, the green component in this beer, it does have a good little bit of that dankness to it, and all three hops in this one, Mosaic, Amarillo and Simcoe, are all capable of giving you a good hefty floral component. But for me, there's a little touch of earthiness in there, which is most likely to come from the Mosaic. There is a wee bit of piney character out of this one, but none of these three hops are really known for being overly piney. But for me, it's got like quite an oily and pungent floral aromaticity, and the more that you smell of this beer, the more that you're going to get of that, actually, I think. But yeah, the green component for me, it's quite an oily floral character, but you've got a nice oily grassiness coming out of it too. And yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, on the fruity side of things, I would say that this beer, it's kind of as I was expecting, for me, the oily side of things, it really is a big oily fruity character that you get out of this beer. So there's a little bit of an oily passion fruit in there, which is likely to come from the Simcoe. I'm also getting little hints of dried apricot and maybe a wee bit of a more oily pineapple as well. I have to say that. I think, yeah, Mosaic can sometimes give you a wee bit of pineapple and a wee bit of lime and stuff like that. But I think the more apricot-y notes they're probably likely to come from the Simcoe, to be honest with you, out of these hops. But overwhelmingly, the fruity side of this beer is orange. You get the brighter tangerines from the Mosaic and the big oily, zesty kind of orange from the Amarillo. Amarillo was always my favourite hop back in the day, I have to say. But yeah, I think the aroma of this one for me is really nice. Like I say, not quite as pungent and piney as some of the West Coasters that we've come across in the past, but yeah, still a lovely, lovely aroma. So yeah, this one should be really quite nice. So this one was the No ga Tokeru, the Brain Melter. Ultra Heaven Triple IPA from Ise Kadoya Brewery in Asahiya here in Japan. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer, but I think it is about time that we try this one. So let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kanpai. Yeah. Tell you something, that's pretty damn solid, but you know, based on my experiences of Ise Kadoya in the past, I'm really not surprised. These guys, yeah, they know what they're doing. Yeah. It's been a long time, as I say, since I've had a West Coast Triple IPA. You know, most breweries, this is one thing I do like about the craft beer scene in Japan. You do get a good variety of different styles here. You know, most of the IPA breweries in Europe are just focusing on the New England hazies. There are West Coasters popping up a little bit more, and you know, the occasional black IPA as well. But in Japan, you do actually have a little bit more balance, and the brewers will try pretty much everything, which I do enjoy. But yeah, this is a really solid West Coast IPA for me, regardless of whether it's single, triple, or double, whatever. I think this is really nicely done. So a big thumbs up to Ise Kadoya for this beer. Like I say, one of their newer releases. It's in good condition, and this is going to be a nice sipper for sure. It gives you everything you'd want from the style. You've got the sweetness in there, you've got the booziness, you've got the bigger hop component. I would say the green component is a bit bigger in the flavour than the aroma would have you believe, and you've got the nice big oily fruity characters coming out of this one too. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me, this one. I do like how this goes together. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? On the, generally speaking, when it comes to the West Coast IPA spectrum, for me this is somewhere in the middle. It does have a little bit of the bready and biscuity side to it, but because it's, I think it's probably because it's a 10% triple, it is leaning a little bit more toward the oily, caramelly side of things the more that you drink of it. So yeah, I do like how this beer pieces together. But let's just break down the flavour as we always do. Middle third of your palate. It's quite a straightforward beer, this one, but it just, as I say, it gives you everything you want from this style category. The backbone of the beer in that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a nice little bit of a kind of fresh, brown bready bread crust coming out of this one, and that goes together very nicely. On top of that, you get a little bit of a more, you get a little bit of a, there is a wee layer of an almost kind of crackery quality to this one, and toward the front of that middle third of the palate there's a little touch of woodiness in there, but I would say those are very subtle flavours. They're not dominant in any kind of way. So, on top of that, you have, on top of that kind of crackery layer, you've got a lovely kind of wholemealy, brown bready type vibe coming out of the beer, which I do like. And the brown bready character that you get out of this one is actually quite, it's quite sweet, to be honest with you. So the way that that goes together is again, very nice. Yeah, on the bready notes, like on top of the kind of crackle, as I say, you've got a kind of sweeter brown bready character there, but you get a fluffy white bready layer above that, which is nice too. But then above the bread, you start to get the kind of brown sugary notes out of the beer. So in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's this kind of concentrated brown sugary circle there, so it's a really oily caramel, and then as you move further out toward the edges of the palate there, you get a wee bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note coming out of the beer. So oily straight up caramel right in the middle of the palate, a little bit more of a kind of biscuity note toward the edges of that middle third of your palate too. And to be honest, I think that covers everything that we would need to say about the to say what's going on in the middle third of the palate with this one. Like I say, it gives you everything you want from the West Coast IPA. Straightforward beer, this one, but just really nicely done. Yeah, on the back third of your palate then, you do have something similar to this. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there, a mix of white bread and brown bread, but the base of that back third of the palate, the bread crusty character is a little bit drier. As I've always said, more bitter and dry flavours come out further back on the palate, the sweeter flavours come out further forward. But yeah, you've got that little bit of drier bread crust in there. There's a wee bit of the crackery layer, which again is more dry. Then you can feel the brown bready layer is there, but it's a little bit taller and a wee bit more airy. Then above that, you have the white bready layer, which again is a little bit more tall and airy, I have to say. Yeah. Above that, you maybe get a little bit of a kind of bread crusty note as well, and then the yeasty characters are just sitting above that too. So yeah, the bread crusty notes in this one on the back third of the palate are really nice, but yeah, you get this yeasty kind of character coming out of the beer too, for sure. But yeah, on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavours are taller, and as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together a wee bit more. So yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that sense is really nice. Yeah, the malty base and the yeasty side of this one is really nicely done. As I say, just above the kind of brown bread notes, you get this slightly more kind of light, sweeter brown bread from the yeast. But yeah, this beer gives you everything you want from a West Coaster on the malty side of things. Let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer then. So, back corners of the palate, you absolutely get a little bit of an earthy character out of this one, and that's most likely to come from the mosaic, I would think. But as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you can feel there is a little bit of a kind of pine resiny depth to the beer, but then you get more and more floral brightness the further forward on that you go as well. You get a little bit more of that floral aromaticity and brightness in there, which is great. So, yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business in that sense is quite nice. You can tell there's obviously been a good little bit of early addition hopping with this one, which you do want from the style. I'm not the biggest fan of the West Coast IPAs that don't have a bit of bitterness to them, I have to say that. But yeah, this one does have a wee bit of that, which is nice. A mix of pine resin and a brighter floral aromaticity, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So yeah, I like how that pieces together. This one, they get a good little bit of grassy zestiness in there, actually, as well. But let's look at the front third of the palate and the fruity side of things to round off the tasting. But yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in there, and for me it's quite a sweet wholemeal brown bready character, and the base of that front third of your palate, it's got a little bit of bread crusty note to it. It's also got a good little bit of you've got a little bit of that bread crusty character in there. You've got a nice little bit of I would say you've got a little bit of the kind of white bread in there, and then the sweeter brown bread, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that. Yeah, so for me, the fruity side of this beer is kind of pretty much what you would expect. At the back of that front third of your palate, there's a bit of a more pungent passion fruity note from the Simcoe, but it kind of mellows out as you come further forward, and it almost gives you this kind of oily mango-y note. As you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a bit of kind of apricot-y note in there. I do get a wee touch of oily pineapple as well, but not overly much. But when you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's got a wee bit more of a it really has got a little bit more of a kind of tangerine-y, orangey sort of quality to it. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really very nice in that sense. So yeah, for me, you can feel the zesty, oily orange from the Amarillo underneath, and the brighter tangerine from the Mosaic sits on top of that. But yeah, as I say, lovely, lovely beer, this one, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that about this one for sure. It goes together very, very nicely. Proper old school West Coast IPA, this one, and I can certainly feel a bit of the warmth down here. But let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's definitely, I think it's bottom end of full bodied for me. The carbonation is quite smooth. It does have an oily mouthfeel, which is understandable when you consider that it's West Coast IPA and it's also a triple West Coast IPA. But yeah, at the same time, it does kind of have a little bit of cleanliness to it, which I do like. In terms of the IBU count with this beer, yeah, in terms of the IBU count, I would say that this one is, what would we say? I think it's at least 70. It could be like a proper old school 80. This one does, the more that I drink of this beer, it does feel more and more bitter, I have to say. I don't think it's quite at the 100 saturation point, but I do get more and more bitterness the more that I drink of this beer, which is interesting because I didn't pick up so much of that in the aroma. But yeah, on the malty side of things, like I say, there's a nice little bit of a kind of fresh bread crusty character in there. So you've got a little bit of dryness, but you've got quite a bit of smoothness and a big oily sweetness too. And the big, yeah, the big juicy oily fruits in this one are very good as well. A mix between tropical, but it leans a little bit more toward that kind of oily, zesty orange as well. But I think this is a really nice one. It's definitely a sipper. It is one of these beers that will, you know, fuck your day in the best way. But yeah, I think this is a really nicely done triple IPA, and it's a wee bit old school as well. You don't get too many of these anymore. So a nice change of pace from the New England hazies, I have to say. But I think we can leave it at that from this one. So yeah, this one was the Noga Tokeru Ultra Heaven Triple IPA from Ise Kadoya Brewery in Ise and Miya here in Japan. Really nice beer, this one. I would recommend it, but yeah, don't drink too many of these. They're a bit dangerous if you did. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Ise Kadoya as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slanjit, Scott, cheers, Kampai. Make sure you check out my social media, check out Ise Kadoya's social media, check out my friend Jordan at Insider Outsider Japan, and also go and see Koji and Rika at Liquor Shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Amachi here in Osaka. But most importantly, try some Japanese craft beers. There are some really interesting things out there, I have to say. But yeah, Slanjit, Scott, cheers. See you guys in the next review. Make sure you try something from Ise Kadoya.